Hello, today our group will talk about the impact of downward auditing fee pressure, specifically on ethical obligation and accounting practices. First, let me introduce the background. According to the Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants, the auditor fee should be set by the auditors in a reasonable range when they offer some professional auditor services. And the auditors may also need to negotiate with the management of the audited company about the fee setting. Hence, as the fee can be set discretionarily, and it may create a wrong price or some unethical behaviors of the auditors. There are many factors which may affect the auditing fee in practice. For example, if a large company asks for auditing, the audit fee would be much more than the small business, as a large company have a wider audited scope. It would cost more time and more money. Moreover, the management may enforce some threats on the auditors to reduce the audited fee, and the auditor may accept the lower price than the normal price, which is ethical. So in this video, we will focus on the ethical obligations and the accounting practice in auditing fee setting under the downward pressure.
Now let's turn to the major issues. First, whether the auditor communicates with those charged with the governance called as TCWG. In stakeholders theory, it considers the relationships that exist between organization and its various stakeholders and relate to the ethical treatment of the stakeholders. So in this case, we could find the managers, regulators, and the investors are all the stakeholders. If the auditors don't perform in a professional or ethical way, the managers and regulators may face the risk of losing a job. So, some efficient communication between TCWG and auditors is especially helpful to identify threats from undue fee pressures and consider some safeguards to keep auditors independent. Second, whether the auditor comply with the fundamental principles and the legitimacy theory could be applied to this case. As we know, the legitimacy theory is used to understand corporate action and activities, particularly relating to social and environmental issues. In this case, it's important to consider how to set audit fee properly. If the fee is too low, it may have a self-interest threat to professional competence and due care. It may be difficult for the auditors to keep independent to finish a professional auditing. So the legitimacy theory could help us to know whether the auditors perform ethically and whether the fees are appropriate under the code.
In this part, I would like to show 3 solutions to the impacts of downward audit fee pressure. First, have a reasonable arrangement. Audit personnel with sufficient expertise and experience should be assigned in accordance with the nature, size, and complexity of the auditor engagement. Second, plan an adequate time. Adequate time should be planned to spend to enable the audit to be performed in accordance with applicable technique and professional standards. Third, encourage more communication between auditors and TCWG. The frequent communication would reduce threats and pressure for management, which would improve the independence of the auditor. Fourth, keep the objectivity of the auditor. The principle of objectivity imposes an obligation on all professional accountants not to affect their professional or business judgment due to bias or the conflicts of interest. In conclusion, downward pressure on auditor fee leads to an ethical implication to auditor. The fee may be undue for the violation to fundamental principle or feel communication between auditors and stakeholders. So it's important to have a reasonable arrangement, keep the objectivity and communication more with the stakeholder to set appropriate auditor fee. That's all. Thank you for your listening.